Okay, just very short. I think some people don't really know what openLilyLib is. I'm reading this all the time on the mailing list. People talk about openLilyLib and others say, what is it? It came to life 5 years ago as a consequence of a project Yannick and I did, and the idea was to have a repository that is essentially a LilyPond snippet repository with Git control that can be used as includes and doesn't rely on the LilyPond version that is hosted on the LSR server. That was the idea. Today, I'm skipping all the evolution. Today, openLilyLib is not the repository, but a project which has one repository. All these openLilyLib / relates to the GitHub organization openLilyLib. OLL core provides a package loading infrastructure plus some things that are not that are on the next slide. And there are a number of, I would say, high-level packages providing functionality. For example, Scholarly for annotations and stuff, and the Edition Engraver, which is also used pretty much. And there's a bunch of other small and large packages available and more or less mature or feature-rich. The original repository has been renamed to Snippets. I would say it's deprecated because these snippets is basically a big heap of where people could just dump their stuff, and there's no structure in it. It's nothing you can find in the LilyPond snippet repository. You have at least a search form and looking for something. This snippets repository is a file structure where every new snippet author has to think of a place, and usually they just add new folders, and it's a very flat hierarchy, but it's not very useful. At the moment it's in an intermediate state. I created the ollMISC repository where a number of snippets have been moved from the snippets repository into a more organized structure. And the idea would be to, at one point, remove the snippets repository, having either moved all the snippets to a more structured and probably dropped some snippets that don't seem very important. But that's something that's very, it's a gray area because there isn't too little involvement in that. The use case or the goal of openLilyLib is twofold. One is what I just said, providing ready-to-use packages. For example, I'm always using Scholarly because that's a complete environment for doing critical editions. I can annotate, I can encode variants, and pretty much stuff, some of which I talked about in my presentation yesterday. The other one is providing building blocks for building I'd say intermediate that can be used in one's own custom infrastructure programming. For example, the module handling, option handling. I use that a lot to store data and to reuse it. Some logging features not so important. As an example, there's an OS path module which is loosely inspired by the Python module, and newly tools like template loading, tool loading. This is stuff that I found very useful when building my concrete projects. I started with also for personal use with a few packages that would aim at making what Harm was asking for easier available. Usually when I'm building something complex, I have to ask on the mailing list. They say, okay, you need to retrieve that property, and from there you can iterate to the staff, and then you can iterate through all these stuff. That's so darkly documented. I started making these things more accessible, but actually I'm not so sure if that's a good idea, because it will make it much easier to work with all these things, but maybe it would be better to have them documented so one can easier use the actual functions. I'm not really sure about that. Okay, that's I've already told you. One problem with it is the snippets and also ollMISC have by now at some point turned into a way that they can only be used as in that context. So you can just copy and paste them again. Personally, I don't mind because that's what I wanted it to be, but it seems from discussions that some people don't like that. They want to have it in a way they can just use the code. And this will also make it hard to integrate functionality at one point. So there always has been the discussion to, for example, integrate Shape 2 into LilyPond or the edition engraver. But the more these tools start to depend on basically the functions in OLL core, the more it will be difficult to pull them out again and integrate them in LilyPond. My problem is the small user and contributor base, because it's a little bit impractical to set up, but mainly because it's heavily underdocumented. And basically that's what I mentioned with Jan Peter's efforts in the morning. It's still basically my project, at least the core. There are a few packages where people put stuff in, but basically it's what I'm doing and when I'm doing it. And also the direction it takes is basically when I have a new need, I will do something, and that's the direction it takes. It's only very loosely related to what I think would be good for LilyPond. It's just what I need. So solution, the first solution which would be very important, which I've been struggling for years now with the idea, is to have a proper documentation infrastructure, which consists of two things: proper manuals for the packages that end users can just read to learn how to do it. I've written those for two packages, for Scholarly and the beginning of the Style Sheets package. They are pretty nice. I think that's what they should look like, but that's not systematic. I just wrote a Markdown document and made it available. It should be more systematic, so there's a process for these and a place to upload them, to have them available. Plus, the code itself should be documented more for people who want to write, who don't want to use the packages, but who want to use the building blocks or create packages. Another idea is to write a Frescobaldi extension. We have never wanted to integrate openLilyLib in Frescobaldi because openLilyLib would be a dependency for the documents. So documents that are using openLilyLib, and if Frescobaldi encouraged the use of openLilyLib, then it would encourage to write documents that can be used somewhere else. So that's what you actually don't really want.
No.
Yeah, well, well, that's also one incentive why I now wrote this extension API, because an openLilyLib extension would be perfect for this case, and this should manage and install packages and the infrastructure and provide an API for secondary extensions. For example, an extension for GUI to edit the edition engraver or to an annotation editor and viewer. Okay. May I have two short things, because I also have good news, 2 points. Recently, just 2 weeks ago, Craig Davidstein, who is a more or less regular contributor to the mailing list, asked me for help. No, not for help. The mail was titled Help, and he was asking where he could help. And we agreed upon going for this documentation project. So right now he's investigating various types of documentation systems and how we could do that. I hope he will stick to that, so we might get somewhere. And the next thing is very astonishing. For the next 4 or 6 weeks, I will have an intern. His army is here. Yeah, he's obliged to spend about 150 to 180 hours of work, and I will confirm that, and he will get a third of a semester's work for his studies in music informatics for that. So I think that's a fair deal for everybody. We centered on openLilyLib as a main part of his work, but I also want him to move a few of these functions into openLilyLib, because new social experience in professional context is part of the module description. I thought I can, with good conscience, confirm that he made new social experiences after the process.
Whatever one calls social.
Our idea was that he would mainly contribute or rework one package, the analysis for music theory. But I thought over these days we should rethink that. Maybe we can use these concentrated amount of working hours for something more fundamental. So my question is, how could openLilyLib become that place for an extension infrastructure, and what could we do right now, knowing that we have well, maybe a starting point with a few weeks of real work.
You see in many modern programming language environments like Go and also NPM that there's sort of and Rust, that there's an integrated support within the system for having packages, and so I guess with this scheme you have to somehow get your thing into this openLilyLib repository, but I think it would be interesting to have a scheme where you can just put the extension that you write on a home page that you want to use.
You can.
You can?
Actually, it's just the core that has some infrastructure that you can load other modules, and where the repository for that resides doesn't matter. It just has to be in the same directory structure on your computer. But you can have your own GitHub repository and publish your openLilyLib module there, and then
Okay. So how do you find this, like some random person on the other side of the planet published a package for figure base, and how do I discover this thing? And then how do I use it?
That's a bit more related to the documentation problem, so that there's some way to encourage users to, or authors of.
But currently there is a kind of package not a manager, but there's a GitHub organization, and all the repositories below that are packages. That would be the first thing to have. These are maybe kind of the official openLilyLib. And one could pretty easily, in theory, write a package manager and have arbitrary repositories of data, but of course that would be management.
One thing that I think would be important is that LilyPond has some sort of central space where it has its own information packages, whatever you call it, that are now kind of openLilyLib, and that it can manage several such directory hierarchies on the local computer that are sourced differently. One will be a central part of LilyPond itself and distributed with it, and others may refer to external repositories where they update themselves, and that you can move your you can move central stuffs into the core LilyPond stuff, or from your local tree where you store your own styles, can move them into the openLilyPond organization repository without having to change your sources. You know, I make my own style for Fernie dynamics, yeah?
Curtains.
What?
Hairpins.
Hairpins.
Yeah, hairpins, yeah, something like that. And then you make your own package, you drop it in your own tree, you work with it, and then you decide at one point, I may contribute it, you write a bit of documentation, you commit it to openLilyPond or you send it over, and then sometimes it migrates to the copy of openLilyPond you have on your computer, and your documents keep working. You know, that kind of stuff, that multiple trees that I don't have to change my input and have to specify other paths or so, but that whatever I use for specifying the specific style file will continue working when that style file is provided by a different source. And if we do that, if we have an infrastructure like that, then it basically becomes a comparatively free decision what kinds of openLilyLib are moved into central LilyPond and distributed from there in future and maintained in there in future, and what kinds stay in different repositories or stay private. We just need to have very little inhibition of changing from one to the other, and we need.
That sounds basically that I would say we should move a subsection of OLL core to LilyPond itself.
Definitely.
There's basically a subsection that handles the module and package loading. Not all the stuff with, all the stuff, all these auxiliary functions that are needed for the package loading mechanism, but nothing else. That would be a problem.
Whether nothing else we have to see in the long term, but I think it would be important to have the package loading mechanism that you now use in openLilyPond or something different, but the basic package loading have that in the core of LilyPond, yes.
Okay, the thing with that is it's comparably large code, and it's only mostly or only written by me, and well, we'll see. We can go for that and try to see what happens, how much headwind I will get for the coding quality, for example. Okay, Yannick and then Kieran.
So I would like to take a step back and ask a bigger question, because we got a bit deep into implementation detail, and I think that's valuable but for later. And do we agree that we want to make openLilyLib the package managing system for LilyPond? Because I think it's the obvious contender, and right now we only need to agree on that we want to do this, and then we can sort out the details of how to do this.
Basically, I don't know how the openLilyPond package management works.
I can prepare what to show to you. I will show you what you should have a look at, so you don't have to find your way through it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a question. Shall we dump this in and not have further discussion? But I think it would be very important to have something proposed and then go from there via the usual code review path and hope that we arrive at something useful then.
In that case, I would actually ask for rather strict code review.
Yeah, of course.
Because I don't know the quality of my code, and I know that it would be a rather consequential addition.
But the thing is, the quality of the code is secondary, because we can fix that. The quality of the organization of what it does and how it organizes things, that's an important thing, and that's definitely something we should then review and get to an agreement. The code can be fixed.
I think I would start with looking at it again and sending to the demo list where the things are that you should have a look at and to comment on.
Yeah.
Without not yet a proposal, but just have a look. Here it is, and
Okay.
Okay, it's 4,500 lines of scheme.
Oh.
But I have faith in David that he can review that. Some of it is examples, and yeah, documentation. Yeah, it should be that.
Yeah,
Kieran also.
Most of what you just discussed answered my question.
Okay.
I just to note that the fact that right now openLilyLib is an external project gives other opportunity to just play around with it. Some of us already have some experience with it because they use some or a lot of it, and so we can see how it works. If somebody uses it could be done different, and so that's one main call I would make to encourage everybody who's just remotely interested to try it out and share their experience so we can see what can be better. Once it's inside LilyPond core, it's a bit more difficult to make more fundamental changes.
And one more thing to say is, if we do that, it will definitely not go into 220, I think. And so,
no, 220 not.
So we will have plenty of time to mature it until a 222.
Yeah, yeah. 220 is a different topic that we haven't yet spent much time discussing, and it's really something that should be out as fast as possible.
Okay. Then I think we can. You go on to Wilbert or to the lunch?
Nice words.